Let's go for it! I like the dark stuff. Give me the dark stuff. I like the dark stuff. Give me the dark stuff.
Hey there, everybody. It's me, your buddy Dave, the host of the Dark Stuff channel here on YouTube. Thanks a lot for checking out the new video. In this video, my friends Keith and Joey return. And, a couple weeks ago, we were all hanging out in person, having a outdoor, socially distant hang session. And in it, we decided to come up with some new topics for potential videos. And one that we all got super excited about was best soundtracks. And so that's what we decided to do. And we didn't want to narrow it to just of the 90s or just of the 80s or just of the 70s. So we're picking best soundtracks of all time and of the rock era, I guess. I mean, we're not going back to the Glenn Miller Orchestra or whatever. So that's what the topic of this one. I want to clarify one quick thing because I got people asking me about it. So my friend's name is Joey. Okay, it's spelled Joi, but there's an inside joke that runs between Keith and myself and Joey that it's because it's spelled looks like joie, like in French. So Keith always refers to her as joie. People were asking, what is it? Well, it's an inside joke. Sorry. Okay. So now on to the video. Best soundtracks of all time. So okay, let's. I guess we'll do it the way I'll start first, and then we'll go. Me, Keith, Joey, Keith, and then back to me at the end. So. I'll start with the most obscure one, the one that's the most impossible to hear anything about because this movie just kind of came and went. It's A Matter of Degrees. Here's my original CD. Okay, 1991. Now let me see what I can find out about the movie. I mean, the movie, I've still never seen it. Okay, it came out when I was 20 years old back in 1991, almost 30 years ago. And the contents of this soundtrack are like my musical taste circa the year this came out. Okay. It is Fire Hose, Giant Sand, 11th Dream Day, Miracle Legion, who I never really liked. They were kind of an REM sort of ripoff. Yola Tango, the Pixies, the Lemonheads, Alex Chilton, Schoolie D, Nova Mob, which is Grant Hart from Husker Du, Miracle Legion again for some reason, covering Mission of Burma though, Keith. Uncle Tupelo, and then Throwing Muses. So it's like half the bands I liked, and it was right before the whole Nirvana, Pearl Jam, the alternative. So these bands were still very much kind of underground. Yeah. So I just never had an assembling of all this music that was exactly like my taste that year. There's just no way around it. And the movie, of course, back then, not everything was instantly available. If it didn't come to a theater in your town, that's it. Maybe you get it on a VHS tape a year or two later, if you remember, who knows? So it's pretty much my favorite soundtrack ever. And I've never seen the movie still to this day, almost 30 years later.
I didn't know the movie existed until you told me about the movie. And then I went and looked at the soundtrack, and I was like, holy shit, this is a really good soundtrack.
Right. And I mean, there's this guy's name, it says on the back here, music supervisor Jim Dunbar. Like, whoever that guy is, he had his shit together in 1991. I'll tell you that much. I mean, he definitely did. So I think the movie has something to do with like a college radio station and the man is trying to shut him down or something like that. There's a million movies that were sort of like that in the 80s and early 90s.
Yes, Dave, that movie you just described, Pump Up the Volume.
Yeah. Well, this would be a couple years before Pump Up the Volume. Because that Pump Up the Volume was like 94, 95.
Was
this
it?
Okay. This is 91. So maybe Pump Up the Volume took it from them.
Maybe it did.
I mean, so this came out in June 1991. And that is pre-Nirvana. That's the whole alternative explosion. So this was just college rock. I mean, and who puts Alex Chilton on a soundtrack? Nobody did that. I mean, nobody, he was just a cult figure back then. You know, it's just
I did
hilarious.
not. 14-year-old me did not know who Alex Chilton was, and that's that
Right.
I would have been that old when that soundtrack was out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I've been listening to this. I've had this CD since it came out. To tell you the truth, the main reason I bought it was because Nova Mob was on it. Nova Mob is Grant Hart from Husker Du. In 1991, I was pretty much obsessed with anything Husker Du related. Bob Mould, Grant Hart. Their Sugar didn't even exist at this point, so it was just
Right.
Bob and Grant. And Nova Mob was Grant's new band. And this song came out, and I was just like, wow, this song is so fucking good. Evergreen Memorial Drive. And, he never had a song that good as Nova Mob, honestly. I mean, he's one of my favorite artists, but a huge weakness of his catalog is like poor production. And, as great a songwriter as Grant Hart is, he's not a guitar player like Bob Mould. So Bob Mould's shit just rages because he's so good at guitar. Grant insisted on being a guitar player, and he was just kind of decent at guitar,
Oh, by the way, not that I'm trying to turn this into a Christian Slater podcast.
Okay, no problem.
Who would do that?
Yes, you should. No,
Yeah, I think he cut me a board at Lowe's the other day. But when that movie, I just looked this up on my phone, Pump Up the Volume, you know when that came out, Dave?
When?
1990.
Oh,
I remember that.
I stand corrected. Then it was a year before. Okay.
Well, I thought it was like 92, but
I thought it was mid 90s, honestly.
Yeah, I just looked that up, just out of curiosity.
Wow, I don't believe that.
Where does the time go?
I started a little thread on Facebook today where I posted a picture of Matter of Degrees. I said, I'm on a podcast for best soundtracks. My intent was for people to comment on Matter of Degrees, but nobody caught that, so they all put down their favorite soundtracks, right? And it was pretty cool. There was all these ones I was like, oh yeah, what about that one? Pump Up the Volume and Repo Man were both put in twice. And I was like, those are both really good soundtracks.
Repo Man for sure.
But you can't find that anywhere. And the song Repo Man by Iggy Pop has kind of been erased from the internet. Like, you just literally can't find it.
It's crazy, man.
It's so dumb. I don't understand. But anyways, so that's my thought. I mean, did anybody listen to any of? Were you able to listen to any of the Matter of Degree stuff?
I was.
Yeah,
I did.
Okay.
I liked it. It was good. It was a good like indie rock like jam mix. So it was nice like background music when I was working from home today. So I really liked it. And there was some stuff that I didn't recognize any of the artists, or like that. What's the Grant Hart band?
Nova Mob.
I really liked that one, and I was like, oh, and kind of putting everything together, you realize who these artists were with other bands, and so yeah, there was a nice little surprise there, Dave.
Yeah, and that Yola Tango track is exclusive to that. The Fire Hose track at the time was exclusive to that. It came out on a Greatest Hits a couple years later. The Lemonhead, someone told me on the internet today that that's an alternate version of the one that's on their Lovey album, which had come out earlier that year. I don't, I didn't verify that myself. I'm just taking the, I'm getting internet information. I'm just sort of going with it. That's what I had heard. And so just for that, and then they throw on Schoolie D for some reason. Like, where'd that come from? I mean, it's an awesome song, but I was just like, that's a little bizarre. And I don't think that's the one that you can't find it anywhere or something. But anyways, that's my, all three of these they're just among my favorites. I don't know if I could pinpoint a definite favorite, but I've been talking about this soundtrack to people for years. I've only encountered like maybe 5 people ever who have been like, yeah, that is a great soundtrack, because it's just, this movie was disappeared from Hollywood. I don't know.
I just find it interesting that I can't think of a sound. Well, I guess I'm trying to think of like soundtracks that I loved, but I've never seen the movie.
So moving on from mine, Matter of Degrees, let's go to Keith. What is give me one of your 3 favorite soundtracks.
I guess the third one, it was a coin flip for me. I just picked Rushmore, but I could have picked Rushmore or the Royal Tenenbaums. And it's because, I love Wes Anderson. Definitely one of my favorite directors, certainly. And dude is so good about putting music with his
Mhm.
scenes. Like there's two kinds of soundtracks. There's soundtracks that like just like set a mood of like, oh, these are all 60s songs, so this is a 60s movie,
Right.
or a movie based in the 60s. Or there's a soundtrack like Rushmore or the Royal Tenenbaums that like the song and the scene are so wrapped up together and so simultaneously good that you can't help think of one without the other. And this is one of those soundtracks to me. So like, when I think of the beginning of Rushmore, when they're showing all the clubs Max is in, Jason Schwartzman's character, they're playing Making Time by The Creation. Or, when I think of when him and Bill Murray's character are like, in a war for the girl in the movie, Mrs. Cross, I think of The Who's A Quick One While Is Away. I mean, it's just such a good soundtrack. So that's my number 3.
Yeah, it is. It is a good soundtrack. It's funny because you say how much it's intertwined with the movie, and I've honestly kind of forgotten that movie. I mean, it's weird. Like I know I liked it because I watched it when it came out, and I watched the Royal Tenenbaums, which I have more memories of actually. Much more remember the story. This one, I was like, I know I saw this, but I couldn't remember the movie. But I still like the soundtrack for the most part because it's a weird variety. Cat Stevens,
Yeah,
John Lennon, the Kinks, the Who, and then so anyways, that I don't actually remember the movie at all, and yet I still got something out of the soundtrack.
This was out of all of them. I listened to majority of all the soundtracks, but I really like this one, Keith. Like I found myself listening to this soundtrack repeatedly. I don't know what it was about it, but I've never seen the movie, and I really, really was into this. I think it's just because it had that 60s feel, kind of like that poppy garage vibe. I don't know, but now I kind of want to see the movie because I love Wes Anderson too, and I've never seen this one. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this soundtrack. And
it's funny you say it's like 60s because he does put he put some early Kinks and like Creation and stuff like that in there, and the Who, and just kind of stuff like that. And but the movie's set in 1998.
okay.
But it's a fantastic movie, and I think if you saw the movie, you would kind of get what I'm saying. Like you're like, oh, these scenes are just tied to this, and
Okay.
You would like it.
Okay, I'll have to check it out. But I really like it.
I remember liking it. I just don't remember the movie itself, strangely enough. So, all right, let's move on from that one. Joey, let's get yours. Your first one here.
So oddly enough, what I noticed about all 3 of my albums or soundtracks is on all the covers, someone's holding a gun. I don't know what that says about me, but I noticed that was a common thing through like the vision of them. But first one for me is Romeo and Juliet. Obviously, this was a very popular movie in high school or middle school for me. I obviously was obsessed with Leonardo DiCaprio, and so I bought the soundtrack. What?
Who was it?
I know, right?
No, I'm kidding. I fucking hated that kid until I saw him in The Aviator, and I'm like, oh, this kid can act.
Hey,
The Aviator is what did it for you?
Yeah, seriously, yes.
No, Family Matters or whatever that show was. He was with Kirk Cameron.
Growing Pains.
Growing Pains.
Family
that's
Matters.
No, Growing Pains. I saw him on Growing Pains. I was like, that kid's a star.
What? Family Matters.
Yeah. Sorry, wrong show.
Nobody steals screen time from Urkel.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
You can't. Everybody be like Leonardo who? Because Urkel would outshine him.
Who's that guy?
Yeah.
Well, anyways, just end up really enjoying the soundtrack. It introduced me to a lot of bands. That Radiohead track on there, I think, is like the best thing ever. That was just, I don't know. It opened my doors to Radiohead and down that path. The Garbage track is awesome. And of course, you got the Cardigans' Love Fool, which was like the top hit of, I think, the 90s. I don't know. To me, it was. I feel like that song was everywhere. And that is obviously the main one on here. But this one really just kind of opened up to like another genre of music. And I thought the movie was very artistic. So yeah, that was it for me. And there's some a really good cover, which on the Spotify playlist wasn't on there. It's like a gospel version of When Doves Cry. And so it's just really cool how the one thing I like about Baz Luhrmann movies is like he will take a rock song and make it somehow, gospel, or he'll just twist it around and have like an interesting cover to it, and you're like, oh, that's he just redid Nirvana, or he'll find a way to make it more artistic in his movies. So
It's funny that you say that because the mix on Spotify puts the real When Doves Cry, and because I was listening to it today and it popped up, and I was like, what? This was not in Romeo and Juliet, I mean, so obviously whoever made that playlist on Spotify, substituted some things wrong and put on the actual Prince version, which I thought was bizarre.
Sorry about that. But anyways, so that was my number one soundtrack. And I think many teenagers of the 90s, that was probably their number one soundtrack.
Oh, that was huge. I was working part-time in a record store in 97 when that came out, and I remember that was just flying off the freaking shelves. And I think it was maybe the Garbage Track was the hit, or I don't really remember. Maybe it was that Radiohead song. Or the Cardigans, Love Fool. You're right. That's probably what it was.
I think that was it. And and Desiree, she has a slow track on there, which is beautiful. I think that was the other one that really was popular, was the Cardigans and Desiree. But yeah, there's some great just alternative dark songs on there, which I gravitated.
That Garbage song is awesome. I mean, I don't even really like Garbage. Second, that Everclear song in there is amazing.
It is really good.
Everclear is definitely not a great band in my book.
Wow.
Right.
I've seen them live before, and they were so. With that Everclear song, they're a local god. That song rules.
Everclear was just here like a week ago.
They were?
Yeah, they were at the
Where?
Shadow Ridge Country Club. They do a festival, Shadow Ridge Fest, and Everclear was the band this year. They still did it even with COVID and stuff. They were like,
they spaced everyone out and stuff. And
yeah, I mean, I didn't go, but I mean, that's what I hear. It was that they spaced everyone out, but I don't know how much space. I mean, I'm not sure how it really worked, but either way, funny. You just say Everclear and they were just here, and their original drummer is from Omaha.
Oh, did not know that.
There you go. A little trivia for you.
There you go.
Anyways, and the Butthole Surfers are on there.
That's right.
Yeah, that was another song. Yeah, there's just some great grunge bands on there, and I don't know that band Monday. That's a great track. But yeah, just some really good eclectic mix for sure. But anyways, that was my number one. So.
Okay, well then, turning it back around, why don't you go again?
Oh,
give us your second one.
Okay, so my second one is Jackie Brown, the Quentin Tarantino movie, and I think this is probably his most chill or most. I think this is the one Quentin Tarantino movie that people don't like at all. It's like his least favorite, I think, amongst fans, because it's not bloody and gory. And
I liked it.
Okay, yeah, I love the movie,
Yeah.
but out of all the other films, like, this wasn't his most popular one, but it has a strong female lead, and that's why
Robert
I like
De Niro smoking weed like half the movie. That was hilarious.
Come here, weed. Come here, you. Come here.
Can you do that again for me? That was very Peter Griffin, like Robert De Niro. Peter Griffin doing Robert De Niro. That's what it sounded like.
Peter Griffin.
The Family Guy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yo, hey, listen, you're talking to a Simpsons guy.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, you might forgive him for not knowing who Stewie is.
I should have got that.
So I've never made a cartoon reference before, so unless it's Looney Tunes. Anyway, so love this soundtrack. What really drew me into it was there's this live track by Johnny Cash on there. And I had never heard that before. I had the box set of Johnny Cash, and that's not on there.
Oh. So
that's what made me want to buy it. Was this Johnny Cash album called Tennessee Stud. And and then of course it has all these like 1970s kind of like R&B tracks. You got like the Bobby Womack, the Delphonics. There's an excellent Bill Withers track on there.
This was a fun listen. When
Yeah, so
this came up today, I was digging it.
I love that type of stuff. And again, the real one isn't on Spotify, the real actual soundtrack. So I like pulled it up and there was like some Slash song on there. I'm like, there's no Slash in this song
Yeah.
or the soundtrack.
What was that about? All of a sudden, I'm like, what the hell is this Slash song? Slash wasn't even solo back then. Now that I think of it, he was still in Guns N' Roses. So that was crazy. You're right. I forgot all about how Slash was just thrown in there for some reason.
A lot of that soundtrack is dialogue from the movie. So it's a lot of Samuel L. Jackson and Robert De Niro talking to each other, which is great. But so that was my number 2. I think it's a great, if you love like kind of like that 70s stuff. And there's a great Foxy Brown song on there, kind of just a little gem thrown in
If
there.
you notice that apparently the last song, Monte Carlo Nights by Elliot Easton's Tiki Gods. Elliot Easton is the guitar player in the Cars. That's weird. I guess that's a solo thing he did on there. I never knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, he
I
was
didn't
Yeah,
know
well,
that
I-
either.
the left-handed guitar player in the Cars.
I thought that obviously was awesome because I love Johnny Cash, but this definitely was not in my wheelhouse. So I listened to it, and here's the Keith's hot take of the day: I hate HATE Quentin Tarantino, and I hate his movies.
I know.
But his movies have moments of brilliance in them. His movies have brilliant scenes in them. I can't deny that. I hate that kung fu schlocky bullshit, blood spouting everywhere, terrible dialogue, anything with fucking David Carradine in it obviously gets an F in my book out of the gate. But this soundtrack was better than I thought, and my feelings on Tarantino aside, the music was very good.
Like I said,
He usually has really good music.
Robert De Niro being stoned all the time in the movie, and then when he ultimately, spoiler alert, kills Bridget Fonda, that was some funny. That was some funny shit. You know, I mean, that movie was to me,
I've seen it.
even though it's a heist movie. You know, it was very funny to me. Like I got a lot of comedy out of it.
I think that's Quentin Tarantino's best movie, to be honest with you.
Well, I like the one where the Nazis, the Nazi one he did.
Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
Well, I can't.
like that one.
I can't get past that. You can't redo World War II.
No, you're not supposed to. But I like the result.
Brilliant.
I like the result a little better.
Well, obviously, I think we all would. But I mean, to me, it's like hard to get. This is like the most important event in modern history, and you're like having some chick machine gun Hitler in a movie theater. I mean, great, I love it, but it's I'm such a history nerd that it was hard for me to get past that.
Yeah.
Understood.
But,
I
I mean,
gotcha. I understand.
I wish it would have ended like that.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a documentary. That's what I would say, I guess.
No, it was not.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that was Joey's number 2. So let's go to Keith. What is your next one?
My number 2 would be DVD here. 24 people.
Nice.
Okay, so this to me is a soundtrack that just is the opposite of Rushmore. This is just like sets time and place. I mean, this soundtrack is killer. And it just is following, Factory Records and
Right.
Tony Wilson's kind of how he is at one of the people that was at the Lesser Free Trade Hall that saw the Pistols. There was like 40 people there, but it's one of those things like everybody said they were there, but there were only like 40 people there.
Yeah.
And like the first song on the soundtrack is the Sex Pistols. So this thing is amazing. The Sex Pistols are on there, the Clash, Happy Mondays, Joy Division, New Order, the Darude Column. This is a great soundtrack.
A guy called
Is this like
Gerald.
Is
The guy
this
called
based on a
Gerald.
true story? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yes,
Yeah.
this did happen. I mean, there was a Tony Wilson, and he did have a show on Granada TV in the north of England in Manchester, and he did book shows, and he was part of the founding of Factory Records, and when they had Joy Division and then New Order, and it shows how it's a great movie, but it shows how inept they were at management, because they had like one of the biggest selling artists in the world at that time, which was New Order, and they like never had any money. So
Right. No, I like the movie. I have the DVD. It's a good movie. I like anything about record labels and certain music scenes and stuff like that. And even though this is far from my scene, I do like, I love the Buzzcocks. I love Joy Division. Never been a big New Order guy. I do like Happy Mondays though. I think I got to like Happy Mondays maybe from this movie, like because I think I sort of dismissed them when they first came out, and
Sure.
and then the guy was like a big crackhead, and they made some really weird shit after that big album, that Pills and Thrills and whatever. That one singer
Thrills
turned
and
into
Bellyache, yeah.
he turned into a kind of a whack job after that. But
No, Sean Ryder, he was crazy.
Yeah, he was legit crazy. But no, I liked it. I mean, and the movie is a great document of a scene. And even though it's not like my kind of scene, I loved watching it just because I like the story that it's telling. And yeah, that music fits. I sort of see a parallel in a way, as A Matter of Degrees was to me, this movie is to you, this soundtrack, because this was like a you soundtrack, dude. I mean, when I saw this, for sure,
Yeah.
this was a Keith soundtrack.
Oh yeah, I mean, it has the punk stuff, and I mean, the only thing missing is maybe
Human League,
a Stone Roses or a Human League song.
Yeah.
But it is a different. But yeah, I mean, Blue Monday's on there, which is in my book maybe the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And the Clash is on there, and who's my favorite band.
Oh, I forgot about the Clash.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite.
It was a fun listen because I love all that 80s kind of stuff and 70s punk. And so, yeah, this was fun for me. And I remember liking that movie. It's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah. I remember enjoying that film. I just remember the thing about like the pigeons dying on the roof.
Yeah, they supposedly the guys from the Happy Mondays, Sean Ryder and his brother, shot a bunch of birds.
See those guys? That Sean Ryder was.
They were legit, like that music, that kind of that music at that time in Manchester, like Manchester music.
Right.
There was a legit, very east side to that music, the drugs and the like. They were legitimate hoodlums. I mean, they were legitimate,
Tell me if
guys.
this is true. So, I heard a story about them. Like after that big record, the Pills and Thrills record, they go off to like the Bahamas or Jamaica or some shit, to make their next album. And apparently the singer got a hold of all the money and like just blew it all on coke. And like they had to leave the project early, come back to England. This was the story I heard because they were all out of money because he basically pissed it all away.
True story. So they sent him to some island in the Bahamas, and I can't remember what it was. It was, I don't know. I can't remember if it was the Dominican or something like that. But they sent him there because there's no heroin there. Because these guys were smackheads.
Yeah.
And these guys were obsessed with ecstasy. And this is when ecstasy first became huge in the late 80s, the mid to late 80s. And they go there and then they discover, oh, fuck, there's crack everywhere. So these guys are addicts to the highest degree. They'll smoke and do anything. So they start doing crack and end up selling pretty much everything but their clothes for crack. And the masters, the tapes, only had sound on it. They had no lyrics.
Because he never
That's
got
a true story.
Wow.
That's a true story. I mean, Sean Ryder's clean. I mean, he's clean now. But he was crazy.
Yeah. No, okay, so that's fine.
They got a guy in their band that Bez. He just fucking danced around and played maracas. He didn't do anything. But he was in the band.
Well, it's like Ranking Roger. What did he do?
Yeah, what did Ranking Roger do?
I don't know.
Or the guy from the Mighty Mighty Bosstones who just danced.
That's what I was just thinking. That guy who just stands in the back and dances.
Yeah, he just dances.
I mean, more bands should have that, frankly. That's all I'm saying. So, okay, we'll move on. My next one, I'm going to do the heavy metal soundtrack. And let me tell you, there's a couple of reasons why I chose this one. It's 1981, I think, when this came out. I was a little kid, and I was so intrigued by the idea of an R-rated cartoon. There was no internet. There was no way to get it, but I was just like, fuck, this sounds so awesome. It's an R-rated cartoon. There's girls with no clothes. There's a rock and roll. There's just all this stuff. I'm just like, this sounds awesome. I'm 10 years old. This is what I want to focus on. I could never get a hold of the movie. I didn't see it for a good 15 years later, in the 90s. It wasn't even that good. It was pretty dumb. But the point is, the soundtrack was really cool. It was a mix of popular album tracks from some like, you know, FM radio bands, because Journey's on there, and Grand Funk Railroad and some others. But then it's got some original shit. The Sammy Hagar song, which you know how much I dislike Van Hagar. I don't mind that song Heavy Metal by Sammy Hagar.
That surprised me. I was like, wow, wait a minute.
Yeah, Dave, your hatred of Hagar is out there in the
Look,
internet. I mean,
I know.
it's out
I've spoken of it many times, and he ruined Van Halen. That's my solid opinion. It is unwavering. I will never change. But this is pre Van Halen. This is 5 years before he joined. He was still doing pretty good. There's Blue Oyster Cult on there. There's
Hell yeah.
two brand new original Cheap Trick songs that were never on anything else. And a little trivia, I like to always throw that out there. These are the only 2 Cheap Trick songs ever to feature this guy Pete Comida on bass, who came in and then he was like gone. You know what I mean? He was here today, gone later today. But he did record a couple of tracks, and those are the 2 songs that he appeared on. So that's a little bit
Hey,
unique
Dave,
for
you
that.
know why he was? Wasn't Cheap Trick? Wasn't Robin Zander their bass player?
No, Robin Zander's the singer. So Tom Peterson quit.
No, I'm sorry.
Tom Peterson quit in 1980 because he wanted to go solo, and Pete
didn't know that.
Comida came in, and I know this because this was like 80, 81, and I remember all the teen magazines, 16 and all that, were like, look at the cute new guy from Cheap Trick, you know, it's Pete Comida. He had big curly Jufro or whatever, and you know, other girls loved him. You know, he was real cute and all that. And then all of a sudden he was gone, and this other guy, John Brandt, came in, who stayed for the next like 6-7 years. They never really explained what happened to Pete. But today when I talked about it on Facebook, someone posted a link to a video of Cheap Trick playing that one of these songs, and Pete was there. He was the bass player on it. So it's like one of the only performances he ever did. So I didn't know he even did that until today. That's just something that I learned. Black Sabbath is on there, Stevie Nicks. Don Felder, another guy, you know how much I hate the Eagles, okay?
Mhm.
Don Felder has 2 songs on this soundtrack. I'm going to tell you, I like them both. I mean, Don Felder's Heavy Metal, Taking a Ride, you know. They in 81 on Z92, they used to play the shit out of Hagar's Heavy Metal and Don Felder's Heavy Metal. It was like those, every hour one of them was played. That's like, it's like so ingrained in my skull, I will never be able to shake it. So that's my version on that one. I think it's great. That Grand Funk Railroad track is actually very, very rocking for 80s Grand Funk, because, you know, they were like a 70s band. Anyways, there you go. Those are my thoughts. Me, 10 years old, that was like the fucking ideal. I loved that soundtrack. And I still kind of do, you know.
I
So
think it's pretty
this threw me
sweet. Dave.
off. Go ahead, Keith.
Oh, thanks, Joel. Yeah, I like I'm obviously, I don't like the Grand Funk Road, but that song is pretty good.
Right.
And the Hagar track's good. The Cheap Trick stuff is great. I love Cheap Trick. So I think, that's great.
Those are
anyway.
great. Those are great songs.
But yeah, that's it's kind of a weird mix of music, but it works. And I'm with you. Like the movie, I didn't see it till I was older. And I don't ever think I even watched it all. I think
no. And then there's a remake too. There's a Heavy
know.
Metal 2000, like a sequel or something. I never even tried to watch that because by now I knew that it was shitty because the first one was so shitty. But at age 10, honestly, that was
too, like when you were 10.
It's like the most exciting thing I'd ever heard of. Yeah, I was just like, whoa, you know.
Right. By the time I'd seen the movie, I'd already seen a lot of boobs and
right.
So I didn't care.
I didn't need to see it. I didn't need to see a cartoon of it, you know.
Real boobs.
Right.
But yeah.
Those are the things, when you're like 10 and in the 80s, there's no internet. Imagine what you could have learned if you had the internet when you were 10. I mean, I'm
really glad I didn't have the internet.
It's probably for the best.
I mean, we had the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, it's probably for the best.
I had Jeopardy,
yeah.
This really threw me off, and I didn't actually get through all the soundtrack on there because it looked like it was going to be a lot more heavy metal music, and then there's this song by Devo, Working in a Coal Mine. I'm like,
right.
What the hell is happening right now? Like, what am I listening to? What kind of movie is this? Because it has that bodacious babe on like the cover of it holding like a sword in the sky, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna be like all really dark, Slayer, like that's what I was expecting or stuff
No,
like
it was.
that.
I mean, the movie is sort of like Dungeons and Dragons-y kind of cartoons with lots of topless girls and stuff like that. Like it's just for nerds,
I
you
mean,
know. For the
I
most
think
part,
how else are you gonna make Dungeons and Dragons interesting to people?
I mean, because
I
you
think
can't
it's
make
for
it
nerds.
interesting. Yeah, it's definitely for nerds. But I mean, again, I will stand by me at age 10. I was very excited about the whole thing. But yeah, the movie was a bit of a buzzkill, but the soundtrack is pretty solid, So it's a good one, very enjoyable. Okay, so I'll move on to my last one as we whip it around here. And that is Less Than Zero.
Hell yes.
There's Robert Downey Jr. there on the back. Now, the
Mhm.
movie, I
Yes.
haven't seen this movie since the 80s, so I don't really remember. I've heard mixed things about it since then. I remember
I haven't
liking it.
since about 2 weeks ago.
I remember liking it back as a kid, as a teenager when this movie came out. But I've heard it's not that great now. But Robert Downey Jr. is pretty awesome. But seeing him having to turn gay tricks to pay off his drug habit was a little disturbing for 16-year-old me. I was not prepared for that. That's all I'm saying. But back to the soundtrack. This soundtrack is pretty excellent. It's got exclusive songs on here from Aerosmith, which is a cover, Rockin' Pneumonia and the Boogie Woogie Flu, which actually sounds kind of dumb, but it's actually really good.
Mhm.
Roy Orbison, Poison covering Kiss. It's a stupid version. It's terrible. If you start the song with your singer going, "Hello, boys," or whatever it is, I mean, or "Come on, boy," I'm like,
Didn't voices start every song with like
half
hello?
of
I
them.
feel like that's the only way
Yeah.
Bret Michaels will start any track is
Yeah, he goes, "Come on, boys," trademark, Bret Michaels.
Yeah,
And then he moves on.
He could give a eulogy at a funeral. Hello, boys.
Yeah. So I don't really care much for their cover, but going back to Cali from LL Cool J was the
Hell
big
yeah.
hit off
That's a
this
good
one. And then what I discovered years later is there's a song on here called "You and Me, Less Than Zero" by the group Glenn Danzig and the Power and Fury Orchestra. Okay, now that is actually the band Danzig, but they
Mhm.
hadn't made their name yet. Okay,
Oh.
so they had formed, and Rick Rubin, who produced the soundtrack, was working with them and got a song out of it because Glenn Danzig's favorite singer of all time is Roy Orbison, and he produced the Roy Orbison track. Weird little trivia there.
Interesting.
And Danzig
Interesting.
didn't have the name for his band yet. There was the Misfits, then he did Sam Hain or Samhain, however you want to pronounce it. And then he did Danzig, but Danzig hadn't come out yet. So he was going to call the band Glenn Danzig and the Power and Fury Orchestra. Thankfully, someone talked him out of that.
Yeah.
Slayer, Inagata Devita, which I've talked about on multiple videos. Public Enemy, No Big Deal. That was just an album track from them. Bring the Noise. It's got Joan Jett. And then Hazy Shade of Winter by the Bangles, which was also a huge hit. Simon and Garfunkel cover. But it's just an amazing soundtrack, really wide variety of stuff. When you're talking, Oran, Juice Jones, the Bangles, Slayer, Roy Orbison, LL Cool J.
Yeah.
It's pretty hugely diverse for a 1987 movie. And my last comment on the movie is Jamie Gertz. Whoa, tip of the hat to her back in the 80s. Jesus Christ, she was a good-looking
She still
woman
looks
back
great.
in the 80s. I haven't seen
she's
her
a
recently.
Beautiful woman. She
Yeah.
looks great.
But
So
she's like-
I actually loved this book. This is like one of my favorite books. And I
Agreed.
was incredibly disappointed with the movie. Like
Okay.
so bummed because I read it later in college. And so I watched this movie in the 2000s. So of course I'm like, oh, cheesy 80s movie. But I really, really did not like it. But the
believe it.
soundtrack's good. You got through most of it. But I enjoyed it. It was like a good rap mix, and yeah, that Roy Orbison song is great. But yeah, I liked it's a really good classic 80s songs on there. Like were really popular then. So
Hey, I'm a Slayer fan because of that Inagata Devita cover. I mean,
I didn't mind it.
I did a whole video on that particular song, so I won't delve into it. But yeah, that's the reason why I started getting into Slayer, and I'm still a fan 33 years later from that. So that was cool.
Two things on this. One, Joel, you're absolutely right. It's impossible to make Bret Easton Ellis books into great movies. Impossible. I don't know why, but the closest thing is American Psycho.
Yeah.
I was about to say, aren't you going to mention American Psycho?
Okay, I love American Psycho, the movie, but it really has little to do with the book. You couldn't make that book into a movie. It would be so disgusting and abhorrent and funny that,
well, you remember when the book came out, there were a lot of people who tried to get that thing banned.
Yeah.
When American Psycho, because they were just like, this is the most misogynistic, woman-hating book of all time. And all he does is kill women. And I was just like, whoa. Okay.
People get it wrong. It's a treatise on consumer culture to me. That's what I got out of it. But, maybe Joao could read it. That's the thing with literature. Everybody gets something different out of it.
Right.
But, and secondly, I was always so pissed that, because the movie is obviously not that great.
Yeah.
But I was always so pissed that there was never an Elvis Costello song on the soundtrack, because Elvis, the poster in his room, he always is alluding to Elvis in Costello in the book.
Well, and the song Less Than Zero by Elvis Costello on his first album.
Yeah.
Right.
Never thought about that.
No, and they also in the movie allude. Bret Easton Ellis always alludes to music in his books, but he also alludes to the Stray Cats a lot. So I always wondered why there wasn't a Stray Cats song in here either.
Oh.
Well, Rick Rubin was putting it together, and he couldn't get a deal with the Stray Cats or something.
Maybe not.
Because if you notice, a lot of these are groups he was working with. LL Cool J.
Oh, sure.
He discovered LL Cool J.
Right.
Glenn Danzig, he discovered and put Danzig out. Public Enemy, he used to produce Public Enemy. He discovered them.
Right.
I don't know what his connection is necessarily to the Bangles, but the Roy Orbison thing, he used to do a lot of taking older artists and bringing them back, like he did with Johnny Cash throughout the 90s.
Right.
And here he was doing this with Roy Orbison. So yeah, it's a very Rick Rubin thing before Rick Rubin turned into kind of a weirdo hippie that just sort of sits around and lays there while the music is. Anyways, I don't want to go off on a tangent about Rick Rubin, but anyways, that was a very good soundtrack. And that, like I said, none of these three are like my favorite ever, but these are among my favorites. And Less Than Zero has been one that I consistently listen to for 3+ decades now. And I haven't even attempted to go back and see the movie. And now why should I? Because I hear how much it sucks. So what's the point, why bother?
Don't bother.
Don't bother. Okay. So those were my three. Let's go back to Keith and with your next one. Or your favorite one.
Mine's Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Nice.
Like this soundtrack is so good. It's like all the Americana. This kind of made me like Americana music and like early country and stuff like that. I didn't really think of it before this movie. This movie came out, I don't know, 2000, 2001, and right when I was the end of my going to college time, and I don't know, I was just taken by it, and all the the older artists in it, like the Carter Family and Mother Maybelle and stuff like that. But then also has and Ralph Stanley, and it also has Alison Krauss, who I love, and Jillian Welch, and it's awesome. So this is another one of those to me that it sets the songs are so intertwined with the film that it's hard to think of a scene without the song playing in my head. And
that's what I was. I'm sorry. That's what I was going to say. The music is so intertwined with the movie. For me, it's hard to listen to it separate.
Because you're right, and it's about they make music in the movie. They go to a radio station and record a record.
For me, these songs flow better, and everything about them ties with the movie. And separate from the movie, it's like, oh, okay. I wasn't as into the songs, but when I watched the movie, I loved the soundtrack. I loved the music that was playing, and it was really fitting for it. So that's a good example of one that, to me, I can't separate the two. I can only listen to this while the movie is playing for me.
Sure. But this movie definitely got me into country and Americana. Absolutely. I didn't ever think about that. Then me only listened to, punk rock and indie and lo-fi and
Nothing wrong with that.
Britpop and stuff. So in goth, of course, but it got me into a different kind of music, which was cool.
See, for me, I actually like the movie is so out there because this is a Coen Brothers movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I like the movie, but I remember liking the soundtrack more.
I think a lot of people did. I love the movie.
You're right. Like when I think of certain songs, I'm like, this is totally like that scene. Like it takes you to definitely define moments in the movie. And I freaking love that Alison Krauss song, the Down to the River, or it's like the second or third track on there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I love her voice. So
she's amazing.
very good pick. This surprised me that you would pick something like this. So this was a nice little surprise.
Thanks, Rob. This was listen, like everybody, I sit down and made lists and everything, and there was like other soundtracks that I was, thinking about putting. I was like, I got to put this number one. So
Yeah. No, I was totally not expecting this one when you picked it. Would not have expected it.
I just love the band, the Soggy Bottom Boys. Like that's just a great band name.
I was gonna sue George Clooney because in college I was gonna have a rap group named that.
The Soggy Bottom Boys?
Yeah, we were gonna be called the Soggy Bottom Boys from Iowa City, Iowa, but it just didn't pan out.
Should have trademarked it.
We should have.
Could have got paid.
We were all too drunk and high.
Happens. It was college.
Okay,
so we're down to the very last one. Joey.
Oh yeah, this is the best.
Let's go with yours.
So I chose the Rock and Rolla soundtrack, the Guy Ritchie film.
Fuck yes.
I'm
so proud of you.
This was like back and forth. I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to pick a third one. And one of them was Marie Antoinette I was thinking about, but then I was like, this is such a great, Guy Ritchie has such great music, kind of like a lot of other artists and directors we've been talking about. But I didn't really, like, this isn't necessarily like one of my favorite films by him, but a lot of great like garage rock bands. I love that main track on there that by Black Strobe, and there's a great Wanda Jackson song on there, which is really, when you talk about trying to find the original, like it's really hard to find this original song of The Tunnel of Love anywhere. I don't know why, but somehow I found it on Spotify. All you could find is like a newer version she did with like Jack White like years ago. But I think this is a really great one. Like got like, I think the beats on there, like some good ska tunes, and it's a really good mix of just kind of everything.
I will admit to having never seen this movie. But the soundtrack was pretty fucking great because when I was listening to it, now granted it didn't have that Wanda Jackson or whatever, but I didn't know that Black Strobe, but that was a cool song. The Sonics are on there, the Clash, that Kim Fowley song is kick ass.
Yeah.
Lou Reed, the Scientists. I mean, fuck, that's I've never seen them on a soundtrack or on anything in the States.
No.
Ever, Oh, well, this is an English movie, I guess maybe it's a little bit different, but
British.
Right. And so maybe the Scientists are a little bit better known over there. But anyways, no, this was a cool soundtrack, and I was unfamiliar with the movie. I don't necessarily go for the Guy Ritchie films. I like some of them, but I'm not, like, I don't automatically have to go check it out if he has another movie. But the soundtrack was pretty cool.
Yeah. I enjoy it. I've been actually listening to a lot. It took me back. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot how much I liked this soundtrack. So
I'm very happy you picked this, Joel. I love this movie. You would be surprised to learn this is one of Liz's favorite movies.
Really?
Loves this movie. And we both like Guy Ritchie movies quite a bit. And I almost picked Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and this. We were like, I was thinking about either one for my list. But the songs I hear, that Black Strobe song is awesome. The Subway song is great. That Scientist song is the best song on this thing. That thing
is great.
Ass.
That's a great fucking song.
And like that was great. I love this movie, and I probably like it too because I always like Guy Ritchie. He does a good job with music too, and I like this movie because Tom Hardy's in it, Idris Elba's in it, and
yes, a huge cast. Like everyone is in it. Like when you look back on it, you're like, oh crap, like they were like Gerard Butler's in it, Tandy
Mark Butler's in it,
Newton,
Mark
like
Strong's in it.
Now, Keith,
Lady Newton.
was Idris Elba? Was this pre Stringer Bell?
Post
Stringer Bell. Okay.
Post Stringer.
Because let me
what's
just tell
Stringer
you.
Bell?
Oh, that was his character on The Wire.
The Wire.
Can I tell you when I
You'll have
found
to
out
get into it. I knew he was in that show.
when I found out
Enough.
Idris Elba was British, I was in such shock. I thought he was from Baltimore. You know what? I was just like, "Are you fucking kidding me? This guy's British." I could not believe it the first time I heard him talk for real after The Wire.
Isn't that crazy when that happens? Because I used to I love The Wire and I like the show Sons of Anarchy. And when I found out that Charlie Hunnam's character is British, I was like, what?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. What?
Good acting though. Those guys are good actors.
Oh, really good acting. I believed he was from
Especially
Baltimore.
Elba.
Yeah, I believed he was from Baltimore. You know?
Yeah, I did too.
Completely.
But yeah, Joel, this was a surprising pick from you. I was very, very happy he was on.
Yeah, I freaking love this soundtrack. It's great.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, these were all sort of surprise picks, considering the stuff we were talking about that night when we first sort of decided to do it. There were a lot. Some of the stuff was never even mentioned, so it was a lot of variety. And if you'll notice, just a general theme of a lot of these soundtracks, maybe take out the "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," but it's music that it is from different. Like it's not all one just era. Like the Big Chill, that's all the early '60s. It's more all over the place. Like it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and I think that's cool because that was almost uniform to a lot of what we had there. So this was good. I mean, I think we scraped some pretty interesting soundtracks. I think if we tried to do this, 3 weeks later, I would pick 3 different ones probably, because there'll be a ton that are going in my head. And I was just like, pump up the volume. I mean, I remember that being a good soundtrack. I don't know if it would have made the list or whatever, but there were just some that I forgot, that you just kind of forget about.
Totally.
And because none of them are on like any of the streaming services, or it's very difficult to find them. I was going through mostly what I just had on my own, my CDs and records and whatnot. And it's hard because I shouldn't do this. I should refile my records, but I don't put soundtracks all in one place. I should do that. They're all in there by their name. So if I can't think of the movie's name, how am I going to find it?
Right.
I mean, woe is me. I get it. But I should just pull all soundtracks out and put them all together. Might be easier for me.
Hashtag record nerd problems.
Yeah, exactly. This
That'll be a good winter project for you, Dave.
Maybe I will. Maybe that'll be my winter project. Who knows? I mean, so I've certainly had enough time at home lately to have done it if I was. So my guess is it doesn't happen. But anyways. All right. Hope you dug it. I think it was a pretty wide range of soundtracks. I hadn't actually heard some of that stuff. Immediately I started coming up with a million others that I could have done in its place. And we could do like multiple videos of this, but you got to narrow it down somehow. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.